Before Joseph ever wore Pharaoh's crown, before he became ruler of Egypt, he was simply a boy, a dreamer in the tents of his father. Jacob, his journey from beloved son to slave, from prisoner to prince would shape the destiny of nations. But in the beginning, his life was defined by one thing above all, his father's love. Joseph was born to Jacob and Rachel in Jacob's old age, the child of the wife he had loved more than any other. Rachel had long been barren, and when she finally bore Joseph, Jacob's heart was knit to the boy in a way it was not to his other sons. To Jacob, Joseph was more than a son. He was the living memory of Rachel, a treasure of his heart. Jacob's affection was no secret. He displayed it openly in a gift, a robe unlike any other. Woven with long sleeves and dyed in radiant colors, the garment was stitched with care and dyed with shades of crimson, sapphire, emerald, and gold. When Joseph walked through the camp, the robe caught the desert sunlight and shimmered like royal attire. It was a mark of honor, almost a prophecy of greatness to come. But what Jacob meant as love became the spark of hatred. His brothers watched Joseph pass, the robe flowing in the wind, and bitterness gnawed at their hearts. Every thread, every color whispered the same truth. Father loves him more. Envy grew into anger, and anger hardened into resentment. Joseph himself was still young, 17, full of innocence and vision. And visions came to him in the form of dreams. One morning, his face glowed with excitement as he told his brothers, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain in the field, and suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to mine." The words struck like a blade. His brothers' eyes narrowed, and their voices bristled with rage. "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" Their hatred deepened, sharpened by the thought of Joseph not only favored by their father, but destined to rule them. Yet Joseph's dreams did not end there. Again he came to them, his voice eager, his spirit unshaken. "This time, I dreamed the sun, the moon, and 11 stars bowed down to me. This dream went beyond his brothers. It touched his father as well." Jacob, startled, rebuked him. "Shall I and your mother and your brothers truly bow down before you?" But Jacob was a man who had once dreamed of a ladder reaching to heaven. He knew that dreams were not always the empty wanderings of sleep. Though his words were sharp, his heart was stirred. He pondered Joseph's visions quietly, storing them in memory. For the brothers, however, the dreams were like poison. Each retelling cut deeper into their pride. Each vision fed their bitterness. They began to see Joseph not as a brother, but as a threat, one they could not tolerate. Day after day, their jealousy darkened into something far more dangerous. Where love should have bound them together, hatred took root instead. Joseph was marked, not only by his father's robe, but by his heavenly dreams. He walked with the innocence of youth, but around him jealousy brewed like a storm on the horizon. And so the story begins. A beloved son, chosen and set apart, surrounded by brothers whose envy would soon turn to betrayal. The robe, the dreams, the favor, all of it was preparing him for a destiny greater than he could imagine, but a destiny that would first lead him into the shadows. The days in Jacob's household carried a growing tension. Though the tents of Israel were filled with the sounds of herds and flocks, and though the fields provided grain and pasture, inside the hearts of Joseph's brothers, darkness had taken root. Every time Joseph walked by in his robe of many colors, their anger burned hotter. His dreams echoed in their minds like taunts they could not escape. Shall we bow to him?
I will not.
One day Jacob called Joseph to himself. The old man's eyes still held affection but also worry. "Go, Joseph," Jacob said. "See how your brothers and the flocks are doing near Shechem, and bring me word." Eager to please, Joseph set out, the robe marking him from afar. His journey stretched over miles of wilderness until he reached Shechem, but the brothers were not there. A stranger found him wandering in the fields and said, "They have moved on to Dothan." So Joseph pressed forward, unaware that with each step, he was walking toward the hands of betrayal. From a distance, his brothers saw him coming. The sunlight flashed on his robe, and instantly their rage boiled over. "Here comes the dreamer." One hissed, "Now is our chance," another muttered. Let's kill him and throw his body into one of these pits. We'll say a wild animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." Their words dripped with venom, yet one brother spoke differently. Reuben, the eldest, felt the weight of responsibility. "No," he urged. "Let us not shed his blood. Throw him into this empty cistern here in the wilderness. But do not lay a hand on him."
Never forgive them.
He planned secretly to rescue Joseph later and return him to Jacob. But the others agreed to his suggestion, their hatred too strong to let Joseph go unpunished. When Joseph arrived, smiling and unsuspecting, he barely had time to greet them before rough hands seized him. They ripped the robe from his body, the robe that had fueled their jealousy, and with cruel laughter, they dragged him to the pit. The ground was dry, the cistern empty, and Joseph was cast down into its darkness.
Joseph,
Above him, voices argued. Below, Joseph cried out, confusion and fear echoing against the stone walls. The dreamer who saw the stars bowing now found himself staring at a circle of sky, trapped in a pit. As the brothers sat to eat their meal, a caravan appeared on the horizon, Ishmaelite traders, their camels loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, bound for Egypt. Judah, ever calculating, spoke up. "What profit is there in killing our brother? Come, let us sell him to these Ishmaelites. He is our flesh and blood, but we need not stain our hands with his death." The others nodded, their envy now mixed with greed. And so Joseph was lifted from the pit, not to freedom but to chains. For 20 pieces of silver they sold their brother to strangers. The dreamer was led away toward Egypt, his cries fading with the sound of caravan bells.
Let's not kill him.
Reuben returned later,
Throw him into this
his
pit.
heart pounding with dread. When he found the pit empty, he tore his clothes in anguish. "The boy is gone. What shall I do?" But it was too late. The brothers, determined to hide their sin, dipped Joseph's torn robe in goat's blood and carried it back to Jacob. With false sorrow they said, "This we found. Examine it to see if it is your son's robe." Jacob recognized it instantly. His knees gave way. His voice broke into sobs. "It is my son's robe. A wild beast has devoured him. Surely Joseph has been torn to pieces." The camp echoed with the sound of grief. Jacob tore his clothes, covered himself in sackcloth, and wept bitterly for his son. Though his family tried to comfort him, he refused, crying, "I will go down to the grave mourning for my son." And so Joseph was gone from his father's house, betrayed by his brothers, sold for silver, and carried into Egypt. His robe lay stained with blood, his father's heart broken, and the dreams of the young man seemed shattered forever. But heaven's story was not finished. The journey to Egypt was long and cruel. Bound with ropes, Joseph stumbled behind the camels of the Ishmaelite caravan. The desert sun scorched his skin by day, and the cold winds cut him at night. Each step carried him farther from his father's tents, farther from the hills of Canaan, farther from the home he thought he would never leave. In his heart, grief and fear wrestled with faint threads of hope. His brothers had betrayed him. His father believed him dead, and yet, somewhere deep inside, Joseph clung to the dreams God had given him. He did not know how or when, but he believed heaven still held his life in its hands. When the caravan finally reached Egypt, Joseph entered a world unlike anything he had ever seen. Towering columns and massive temples lined the city streets. Markets overflowed with spices, linen, and gold. The Nile flowed like a river of life through the land, feeding its fields and feeding its pride. For a shepherd boy from Canaan, Egypt was both dazzling and terrifying. At the slave market, Joseph was placed on display, another body for sale among the cries of merchants and the sound of coin. It was here that Potiphar, captain of Pharaoh's guard, noticed him. Potiphar was a man of authority, shrewd in judgment, and he saw something in Joseph that set him apart. Perhaps it was the strength in his stance, or the light in his eyes, but Potiphar purchased Joseph and brought him into his household. In Potiphar's house, Joseph's life took a new shape. He was still a slave, but everything he touched seemed to prosper. The gardens flourished under his care. The accounts balanced with his diligence. The servants respected his fairness. It soon became clear the Lord was with Joseph. Potiphar noticed it too. With each passing day, Joseph rose in responsibility until he was made overseer of the entire household. Nothing was kept from him except the food Potiphar ate and the wife Potiphar cherished. Joseph, though young, carried himself with wisdom, integrity, and a quiet strength that made him stand out in the midst of Egypt's grandeur.
He's strong.
But with favor came testing. Potiphar's wife began to watch Joseph closely. He was handsome in form and appearance, and her eyes lingered on him with growing desire. One day she spoke plainly. "Come, lie with me." Joseph's heart pounded, but his answer was firm. "Behold, my master trusts me with everything in his house. He has withheld nothing from me except you because you are his wife. How then could I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Day after day she pursued him, her whispers echoing in the halls, her glances heavy with intent. Yet Joseph refused. He avoided her presence, choosing integrity over temptation, faithfulness over fleeting pleasure. Then came the day of trial. No servants were in the house. As Joseph entered to do his work, she caught hold of his garment and pulled him close. "Lie with me," she demanded. Joseph wrenched himself free, leaving his garment in her hands, and fled outside. His heart raced, but his conscience was clear. He had chosen righteousness. But righteousness does not always bring reward in this world. Spurned and humiliated, Potiphar's wife turned her desire into vengeance. She lifted Joseph's garment and screamed to the servants, "See! This Hebrew has been brought to make sport of us. He came to lie with me, but I cried out, and when he heard me, he fled, leaving his garment beside me." When Potiphar returned, his wife repeated her tale, her voice heavy with accusation. Potiphar's face hardened. Though in his heart he may have doubted her, he could not ignore her words. Joseph, once trusted and exalted, was seized by guards and thrown into prison. From favored overseer to condemned prisoner, Joseph's fall was swift. The walls of the dungeon closed around him, the air damp and heavy with despair. Yet even in that darkness, Joseph's faith did not break. For though man's judgment had chained him, heaven's purpose still held him. The iron gates clanged shut behind him, and Joseph entered the shadowed halls of Pharaoh's prison. The air was damp, thick with the smell of stone and suffering. Chains rattled as prisoners shuffled in the darkness, men forgotten by the world. For a moment, Joseph felt the weight of despair pressing against his spirit. Once he had worn his father's robe of many colors. Once he had overseen the house of Potiphar. And now he was nothing but a slave, bound in a dungeon. Yet even in the silence of that prison, Joseph remembered the God of his fathers. He whispered prayers into the darkness, prayers that turned despair into endurance. Though man had forsaken him, heaven had not. And slowly, as the days became weeks, and the weeks stretched into months, Joseph's faith began to shine even within those walls. The prison warden noticed. Where others grew bitter, Joseph remained steady. He worked diligently, spoke kindly, and carried himself with integrity. Soon, the warden entrusted him with more responsibility, until Joseph was overseeing the daily care of the other prisoners. Just as in Potiphar's house, everything Joseph touched prospered, for the Lord was with him even in chains. Among the prisoners were 2 men from Pharaoh's court, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker. They had offended their master, and now they shared the dungeon's gloom. One night, each of them had a dream that troubled them deeply. Their faces were pale with fear as Joseph came to them the next morning. "Why are your faces so downcast today?" Joseph asked gently. They replied, "We both had dreams, but there is no one here to interpret them." Joseph's eyes shone with quiet confidence. "Do not interpretations belong to God?" "Tell me your dreams," the cupbearer spoke first. "In my dream, I saw a vine before me, and on the vine were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and clusters of ripe grapes appeared. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes, pressed them into the cup, and placed the cup in Pharaoh's hand."
Look at him. He works
Joseph
so
listened
hard.
carefully, and then said, "This is the meaning. The 3 branches are 3 days.
Amazing.
Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will place Pharaoh's cup in his hand just as you used to do when you were his cupbearer.
Here is
But when it
bread
happens,
for
remember
all.
me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh, so that I might be released from this prison. For I was taken from the land of the Hebrews, and have done nothing to deserve this dungeon." Encouraged by the hopeful interpretation, The baker spoke eagerly of his own dream. In my dream, there were 3 baskets of bread on my head. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds came and ate them out of the basket on my head. Joseph's expression grew solemn. This is the meaning.
Have some water.
The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and hang you on a tree, and the birds will eat away your flesh. The words struck the dungeon like a cold wind. And 3 days later, Joseph's interpretations proved true. On Pharaoh's birthday, the cupbearer was restored to his position, and the baker was executed. Hope swelled in Joseph's heart as the cupbearer returned to Pharaoh's palace. Surely now his name would be spoken, his innocence revealed, and his freedom restored. But days passed, then weeks, then months, and the cupbearer forgot Joseph. Still, Joseph did not let bitterness take root. He held on to his faith, whispering prayers in the silence, trusting that the God who gave dreams would also fulfill them in his time.
We will bring order here.
Joseph remained in prison, a man unjustly bound, yet still a prisoner of hope. 2 full years passed after the cupbearer's release, and still Joseph remained in the darkness of prison. His prayers rose like incense from the dungeon, but no answer came. Yet Joseph did not let go of hope. He had learned that God's timing is often hidden,
3 days,
but never late.
you will be restored.
Then, one night in Pharaoh's palace, the course of history shifted. Pharaoh, king of Egypt and ruler of the world's greatest empire, awoke from a dream that left him shaken. In his vision, he stood by the Nile River. 7 sleek, fat cows emerged from the water and grazed among the reeds. Then suddenly 7 other cows appeared, gaunt, ugly, and thin. The thin cows attacked the fat ones, devouring them completely. Yet after consuming them, they looked just as starved as before. Pharaoh awoke with his heart racing. He tried to sleep again, but a second dream came. This time he saw a single stalk of grain sprouting 7 healthy, plump heads. Then 7 thin and scorched heads grew up after them and swallowed the good ones. Pharaoh awoke once more, restless and troubled. By morning, his spirit was in turmoil. He summoned Egypt's magicians, priests, and wise men, demanding answers. But though they debated, though they spoke in riddles, not one could explain the dreams to Pharaoh's satisfaction. His court fell silent, and the king's anxiety grew heavy over the palace. Then at last, the cupbearer remembered. His eyes widened as he bowed before Pharaoh. "My lord, today I recall my faults. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants, he placed me and the chief baker in custody. There in prison was a young Hebrew. He interpreted our dreams, and everything happened exactly as he said. I was restored to my position, and the baker was executed. Perhaps he can interpret Pharaoh's dreams as well." At once, Pharaoh gave the command, "Bring him to me." Down in the dungeon, Joseph was summoned. Guards rushed him out, shaving his beard and clothing him in fine linen. His chains were removed, and for the first time in years, sunlight fell freely on his face. The prisoner was about to stand before the king of Egypt. When Joseph entered the throne room, Pharaoh's court fell into silence. Golden pillars towered overhead, servants fanned the air, and the mightiest ruler on earth sat in splendor. Pharaoh's piercing eyes studied the young Hebrew before him. "I have had a dream," Pharaoh said, his voice echoing across the chamber. "No one can interpret it, but I have heard it said of you, that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it." Joseph's answer was humble, yet filled with faith. "I cannot do it," he said plainly, "but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." The court gasped at his boldness, but Pharaoh leaned forward and told him the dreams in detail. Joseph listened carefully, his face calm, his spirit attuned to the voice of heaven. When Pharaoh finished, Joseph spoke with clarity. "The dreams of Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed what he is about to do. The 7 good cows and the 7 good heads of grain are 7 years of abundance. But the 7 thin cows and the 7 scorched heads of grain are 7 years of famine that will follow. The abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and the famine will ravage the land. But the reason the dream was given twice is because the matter has been firmly decided by God, and he will soon carry it out." The court trembled at his words. But Joseph continued with wisdom. "Now let Pharaoh look for a discerning and wise man, and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let him appoint commissioners to collect a fifth of the harvest during the 7 years of plenty, and store the grain under Pharaoh's authority to be kept in cities for food. This reserve will be used during the 7 years of famine so that the land may not perish. The throne room grew silent. Pharaoh's counselors shifted uneasily, but no one dared to speak. At last Pharaoh himself rose, his face grave, but his eyes shining with sudden recognition. Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God? And in that moment, the prisoner's fate was about to change forever. The throne room stood still, as though time itself was holding its breath. Joseph, the Hebrew prisoner, had spoken with clarity no wise man in Egypt could match. He had not only explained Pharaoh's troubling dreams, but also laid out the strategy to save the kingdom. His words hung in the air like divine decree. Pharaoh rose from his throne, his golden robe sweeping across the marble floor. The courtiers watched in silence, their eyes darting between the king and the young foreigner who had just spoken. At last, Pharaoh's voice thundered, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" He stepped down from his throne and stood before Joseph. The ruler of Egypt looked directly into the eyes of a Hebrew slave and declared, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people will submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." Gasps filled the chamber. Joseph's heart pounded. Just hours earlier, he had been a prisoner in chains. Now, in a single moment, the God who gave him dreams was lifting him higher than he ever imagined. Pharaoh removed the signet ring from his own hand, the ring of authority, and placed it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and hung a chain of gold around his neck. From slave garments to royal attire, Joseph's transformation was complete. Pharaoh then commanded, and a chariot was prepared. Joseph was paraded through the streets of Egypt as heralds cried before him, "Bow the knee!" Men and women turned to see this new ruler, astonished at how swiftly his honor had risen. The city of Egypt buzzed with wonder. Who was this man, this Hebrew, who now rode in Pharaoh's second chariot? None had ever seen a prisoner exalted to such heights. But those who saw Joseph that day did not see a slave or a dreamer. They saw a leader chosen for a time of destiny. Pharaoh gave Joseph a new name, Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him Asenath, daughter of a priest of On, as his wife. Joseph was now fully established in Egyptian society, yet his heart remained anchored to the God of his fathers. At 30 years old, Joseph stood as second only to Pharaoh in all of Egypt. With wisdom and diligence, he began the great work he had foretold. During the 7 years of abundance, the fields produced grain in such abundance it was beyond measure, like the sand of the sea. Under Joseph's command, the surplus was gathered and stored in great storehouses throughout the cities. Year after year, the reserves grew until they were beyond counting. As the years of plenty passed, Joseph also became a father. 2 sons were born to him, Manasseh and Ephraim. Their names carried meaning born from pain and hope. Manasseh: "It is because God has made me forget all my trouble and all my father's household." Ephraim: "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." Each child was a living reminder that even in a foreign land, God's hand had never left him. When the 7 years of abundance ended, famine came, just as Joseph had said. The Nile's rich banks dried, and the fields grew barren. Hunger spread across Egypt and beyond. But the storehouses under Joseph's care stood full, ready to feed the nation, from prisoner to palace, from chains to command. Joseph's journey had revealed the faithfulness of God. His dreams had not lied, though the path to their fulfillment had been carved through betrayal, slavery, and prison. At last, Joseph stood in the place he was meant to be. And yet, the story was not finished. For far away in the land of Canaan, Jacob and his sons, the very brothers who had betrayed him, were about to feel the sting of famine.
Yes, Lord.
And soon, destiny would bring them face to face with the brother they once sold into slavery. The 7 years of abundance ended, and just as Joseph had foretold, famine struck the land. The Nile shrank, fields cracked under the sun, and harvests withered to dust. Egypt was prepared, for Joseph's storehouses overflowed with grain. From every city, from every corner of the land, people came to buy food, and the famine pressed hard on surrounding nations as well. In Canaan, the family of Jacob felt the hunger. The pastures grew bare, and the flocks grew thin. Jacob's household, once abundant, now trembled at the edge of scarcity. News spread that in Egypt there was grain enough to feed nations. Jacob called his sons together. "Why do you just look at each other? Go down to Egypt and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers set out for Egypt. Benjamin, the youngest and now Jacob's most cherished son, remained behind, for Jacob feared harm might befall him. The brothers joined the long line of foreigners who came to Egypt to buy food. The city's streets buzzed with life, filled with languages from distant lands. And at the center of it all, in Pharaoh's grand hall of grain, sat Joseph, now robed in fine linen, wearing Pharaoh's seal, second only to the king himself. Years had passed since his brothers had cast him into the pit. He was no longer a boy of 17, but a man of 39. Yet when his eyes lifted and fell upon the men from Canaan, he knew them instantly. The faces were older, the beards fuller, but they were his brothers. They did not recognize him. To them he was an Egyptian ruler, head shaved, dressed in royal linen, speaking through interpreters. But as they bowed low before him, Joseph's heart pounded. His dreams, the sheaves, the stars, were unfolding before his very eyes. Joseph kept his composure, though inside him emotions stormed. He spoke harshly through the interpreter. "Where do you come from?" "From the land of Canaan," they replied, "to buy food." Joseph narrowed his eyes. "You are spies! You have come to see where our land is unprotected," they protested, trembling. "No, my lord. Your servants are honest men. We are 12 brothers, sons of one man. The youngest is with our father, and one is no more." Joseph's chest tightened at the words, "one is no more." They believed him gone forever. Yet he pressed on, concealing his identity. "It is just as I told you, you are spies. Here is how you will be tested. Send one of you to bring your youngest brother. The rest will remain confined, so your words may be proved." Joseph had them thrown into prison for 3 days. His heart ached, but his purpose was clear. He needed to know if his brothers had changed. On the 3rd day he spoke again. "Do this and you will live, for I fear God. One of you will stay here. The rest will return with grain for your starving households. But you must bring your youngest brother to me." The brothers looked at one another, their voices heavy with guilt. "Surely we are being punished because of our brother," they said. "We saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this trouble has come upon us." Joseph turned away, tears filling his eyes. After years of silence, he heard their remorse. Yet he steeled himself, returned, and ordered Simeon bound before their eyes. The others he sent back, their sacks filled with grain, and secretly, their silver returned. As they left Egypt, confusion and fear clung to them. Back in Canaan, when Jacob learned of their imprisonment and Simeon's fate, he groaned in anguish. "You have bereaved me. Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and now you would take Benjamin. Everything is against me!" But the famine only worsened, and soon the old man would be forced to make the most painful decision of his life. The famine deepened, devouring the land of Canaan like a relentless beast. The grain Joseph had sent sustained Jacob's household for a time, but soon the store emptied. Hunger returned, gnawing at every home until Jacob turned to his sons once more. "Go back," he said. "Buy us a little more food." But Judah spoke with heavy resolve. "The man solemnly warned us, saying, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you will send Benjamin with us, we will go down and buy food. But if you will not send him, we will not go.'" Jacob's heart twisted. Benjamin was all he had left of Rachel's sons. Joseph was gone, Simeon was bound in Egypt, and now they asked for Benjamin. "Why did you even tell the man you had another brother?" he cried, but the truth was unavoidable. Without Benjamin, they could not return. Reluctantly, Jacob surrendered. With trembling hands, he entrusted Benjamin to them, praying, "May God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will release Simeon and Benjamin. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved." So the brothers returned to Egypt, their youngest with them. When Joseph saw Benjamin among them, his heart nearly broke. He ordered that the men be brought to his house, and a feast prepared. At the table, Joseph looked upon his brothers, older now, marked by hardship, and at Benjamin, no longer a child, but a young man. Overcome with emotion, Joseph excused himself, entering his chamber where he wept freely. The sound of his sobs filled the room, the years of longing crashing over him. When he had washed his face, he returned, concealing his tears, and continued the test. He ordered his steward to fill their sacks with grain, to return their silver again, and secretly to place his own silver cup in Benjamin's sack. At dawn the brothers departed, but Joseph's steward pursued them, accusing them of theft. When the cup was found in Benjamin's sack, despair fell upon them all.
He worked so hard.
They were dragged back to Joseph's presence, faces pale with dread.
Amazing.
Judah stepped forward, his voice breaking. "What can we say, my lord? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now my lord's slaves, we ourselves and the one who was found with the cup."
Here is bread for all.
But Joseph pressed further. "Far be it from me to do such a thing. Only the man who was found with the cup will become my slave. The rest of you go back to your father in peace." The brothers fell into silence, the weight unbearable. Judah, the same brother who once suggested selling Joseph for silver, now offered himself in Benjamin's place. He recounted the pain of their father, the loss of Joseph, the promise he had made to protect Benjamin. His voice cracked with sincerity. "Now therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I return to my father if the boy is not with me? I could not bear to see the anguish that would come upon him." Those words pierced Joseph's heart. At last he saw it. His brothers had changed. They were no longer the men who once sold him into slavery without mercy. They had learned repentance, humility, and love. Joseph could no longer hold back. He shouted, "Have everyone leave my presence." Servants and guards hurried out until only his brothers remained. His chest heaved, his tears unstoppable, and his cries echoed through the halls of Egypt. Finally, through his sobs, he spoke the words that stunned them. "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" His brothers froze, their faces drained of color. The ruler before them, the one who held their fate in his hand, was the very brother they had betrayed. But Joseph drew near, stretching out his arms. "Come close to me." They stepped forward, trembling. "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. But do not be distressed or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you." His brothers fell speechless, overwhelmed by fear, awe, and relief. Joseph embraced Benjamin, and together they wept. Then he kissed each of his brothers, tears mingling with forgiveness. The years of pain melted into reconciliation. What had begun with betrayal was now transformed into redemption. The cries of forgiveness echoed through Pharaoh's palace as Joseph embraced his brothers. What years of guilt had buried, grace now uncovered. Word of the reconciliation soon reached Pharaoh himself, and the king was pleased. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Tell your brothers, load your animals and return to the land of Canaan. Bring your father and your families back to me. I will give you the best of Egypt, and you will enjoy the fat of the land." Joseph's brothers, once trembling with fear, now stood in awe. They were given carts, supplies, and garments. To Benjamin, Joseph gave extra silver and robes, a sign of his special love. Then, as they prepared to leave, Joseph spoke with tenderness. "Do not quarrel on the way.
I pray you."
He knew old wounds could resurface, but he wanted their journey home to carry peace. When they reached Canaan, Jacob sat weary in his tent. His face was lined with grief, his body bent by years of sorrow. The brothers entered, and their voices trembled with urgency. "Father Joseph is still alive." "He is ruler of all Egypt." The words struck Jacob like lightning. For a moment he could not believe them. His heart had long been buried under mourning. But when he saw the carts Joseph had sent, when he heard every detail, his spirit revived. Tears filled his eyes and his voice shook. "My son Joseph is alive. I will go and see him before I die." The journey to Egypt began. The family of Israel, sons, grandsons, daughters, and flocks, all moved toward the land that had once enslaved Joseph. At Beersheba, Jacob stopped to offer sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. In the night, God spoke to him in a vision. "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down with you, and I will surely bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes." Encouraged, Jacob continued. The caravan of 70 souls crossed the desert until at last they neared Goshen, where Joseph waited. Joseph prepared his chariot and went out to meet his father. The moment Jacob appeared in the distance, Joseph could no longer contain himself. He leapt from the chariot and ran forward, his royal garments flowing behind him. Then at last, father and son embraced. Joseph threw his arms around his father's neck and wept for a long time. Years of loss, years of longing, years of pain poured out in tears of joy. Jacob held him tightly, his voice breaking. "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." The family settled in Goshen, the fertile land given by Pharaoh. Jacob's household flourished under Joseph's protection. The famine still raged in the world, but in Egypt the children of Israel found safety. For Jacob, the days that remained were sweetened by the presence of the son he thought was lost. And for Joseph, the dreams of his youth had come full circle. His brothers bowed before him, not in mockery of his pride, but in fulfillment of God's design. Yet Joseph's heart was not lifted in arrogance. Instead, it overflowed with gratitude. For what men had meant for evil, God had turned for good. The sound of restoration filled Egypt. As a family once broken was reunited, father and son were together again, and the nation of Israel was preserved for the destiny still to come. The years passed in Egypt, and Jacob's family grew strong in the land of Goshen. The famine ended, yet Pharaoh's favor remained, for Joseph's wisdom had preserved not only Egypt, but also the surrounding nations. The tents of Israel flourished once more, and Jacob's household, once on the brink of despair, found safety under the protection of the son they had once betrayed. But Jacob was an old man. His eyes dimmed, his steps slowed, and his voice grew weaker. As the years caught up with him, he called for Joseph. When Joseph entered, richly robed yet humble before his father, Jacob leaned on his staff and said, "Do not bury me here in Egypt. Carry me out of this land and lay me with my fathers, with Abraham and Isaac, in the cave of Machpelah." Joseph bowed and swore, "I will do as you say." And Jacob blessed him. Soon after, word came. Jacob was near death. Joseph brought his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to his bedside. The aged patriarch, frail and near his end, gathered the strength to sit upright. He looked at the boys, tears filling his weary eyes. "These are the sons God has given you here," Joseph said. Jacob reached out to bless them, crossing his arms deliberately, his right hand upon Ephraim, the younger, and his left upon Manasseh, the firstborn. Joseph tried to correct him, but Jacob refused. "I know, my son, I know. Manasseh will be great, but his younger brother will be greater, and his descendants will become a multitude of nations." Then Jacob summoned all his sons, blessing each one with words that revealed their character and destiny. To Judah he declared, "The scepter will not depart from you, nor the ruler's staff from between your feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come, and the obedience of the nations shall be his." It was a prophecy of kingship, and ultimately of the Messiah who would come from Judah's line. When he had finished blessing them, Jacob drew his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. The tent filled with wailing, and Joseph fell upon his father's face, weeping bitterly. He ordered the physicians to embalm him, as was the custom in Egypt, and Pharaoh gave Joseph leave to fulfill his father's request. With a great company of Egyptians and his brothers, Joseph carried Jacob's body back to Canaan. They buried him in the cave of Machpelah, beside Abraham and Sarah, Isaac and Rebekah, and Leah. It was a burial worthy of a patriarch, the end of a long journey of faith. Afterward, Joseph's brothers trembled. What if Joseph still holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrong we did to him? They whispered. They fell before him, saying, "We are your servants." Joseph wept as he heard their fear. "Do not be afraid," he said gently. "Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." His words soothed them, and once again he spoke with kindness, the wounds of the past fully healed by grace. Joseph lived to see his children's children. But when his own time drew near, he gathered his family and said, "I'm about to die.
We have enough
But
for
God will
everyone.
surely
Please
come
be
to your
patient.
aid and bring you
Next,
up out of this
please.
land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." He made them swear an oath, "Carry my bones up from this place." Years later, when the children of Israel would depart Egypt under Moses, they carried with them the bones of Joseph, a lasting testimony of faith. And so, the story of Joseph, the dreamer betrayed, the slave exalted, the savior of nations, ended not in despair but in hope. His life proclaimed the truth that what men intend for evil, God can turn for good. His legacy lived on, a bridge between the promises of the patriarchs and the nation that would rise to fulfill them.